didn't mean to kill Austin. Ashley, I really didn't. I really think I did that.
Orders that the defendant shall serve a term of 2 years on that count as well.
Dexter Johnson. Dexter Johnson, 18 years old in 2006, and 4 other accomplices kidnapped, carjacked, robbed, raped, and murdered 23-year-old Mariah Aparis and her 17-year-old boyfriend, Hui No. In 2007, a jury convicted him of murder and sentenced him to death. Since he was 18 years old at the time of the crime, the death penalty was on the table. During his sentencing, Dexter threw a chair across the courtroom and had to be subdued by multiple bailiffs, while his family members screamed in anger and threatened Aparis and No's family members inside the courtroom. Keandria Cook. This is Keandria Cook. 14-year-old Keandria Cook used a dating app to lure Perry Nita, who invited Emmanuel Purcell. Cook's then-boyfriend, Kendrick Bass, is accused of shooting Purcell during a carjacking. He survived the shooting, but she was sentenced for 20 years in prison. The video of Keandria's meltdown saw her wailing to hold her mom one last time before being jailed, only for courtroom guards to take her into immediate custody. Dylan Shoemaker. This is Dylan Shoemaker. Dylan Shoemaker was left to babysit his girlfriend's young child, and by the end of the night, the child was dead. According to court documents, Shoemaker fatally beat the child when he would not stop crying. He had his sad face ready and his privilege intact when State Supreme Court Justice M. William Bowler was ready to hand down punishment. Except one thing was unexpectedly standing in his way: his own words. Teenager found guilty and was sentenced to a maximum punishment of a life sentence of 25 years. Samantha Grigg. This is Samantha Grigg. Grigg was an aspiring singer who performed with her band, Undecided, at the Ann Arbor Summer Music Festival. Grigg testified in Clinton County Circuit Court that she, Breeder Nitz, and Haim traveled to East Lansing with plans to beat up and rob Froka, although she didn't say how they knew him. Grigg told the court that she drove Froka to several ATMs before the others started beating him. Froka died because of several injuries. Grigg, 18, pleaded guilty to charges of manslaughter and unarmed robbery in Clinton County trial court. Grigg was sentenced up to 15 years behind bars. Philip Chisholm. This is Philip Chisholm. Chisholm was a 14-year-old freshman who had just moved from Tennessee. On 22 October 2013, Chisholm followed his math teacher Colleen Ritzer into a school bathroom and brutally raped her and murdered her by cutting her throat with a box cutter. Much of the attack was caught by surveillance footage. He rode her body out of school in a recycling bin to bury her in the woods and returned covered in blood. Later that night, he went to the cinema and bought a ticket using Miss Ritzer's credit card. Ritzer was a popular teacher at Danvers High School, about 25 miles north of Boston, during her dream job teaching math. Chisholm, wearing a dark suit and glasses, reportedly showed no emotion during the court case. He was sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility in 25 years. Isaac Duran Infante. Isaac Duran Infante, 23, was accused in the murder of his teacher Felicia Barahona, 36, and their son in the woman's West Harlem apartment on December 22nd. He was charged with first and second-degree murder. During a confession at the 30th precinct, Infante admitted he and his ex-lover got into an argument. Infante didn't like how Felicia was raising the child. Things like feeding Miguel a lot of fast food and dressing him in feminine-looking clothing. Also, he claimed that Barahona was interfering with his relationship with his new girlfriend. He knocked her to the ground in the living room of her third-floor apartment. He allegedly told police she was holding a pair of scissors when she got up. Infante wrapped an electrical cord around Barahona's neck and then squeezed the cord so tightly that she choked to death. After witnessing his mother being strangled, Miguel Barahona, 4, was crying in the bathroom when the suspect took a computer cable, tied it around his neck, and also strangled him. Infante then put on Felicia Barahona's clothing and left the building while concealing his face. He then went back to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where he discarded the clothing. He tried covering up his crimes by trying to make it look like Barahona killed Miguel before killing herself. Infante then grieved for his son while being questioned by detectives. but he was found guilty and later confessed his crimes. He was sentenced to life in prison. Nathaniel Brazil. As a child, Brazil was surrounded by domestic abuse and alcoholism at home, and local police frequently responded to calls from the Brazil residents. On May 26, 2000, the last day of school before students were to start their summer break, Brazil was a 13-year-old student at the school. Brazil was sent home early for throwing a water balloon. He returned with a gun, which he had stolen from a family friend, and went to Barry Granau's English arts classroom, demanding to see two female classmates. When Granau refused to let Brazil speak to them, Brazil shot him point blank in the face and watched him die in front of his classroom door. After the shooting, he ran. Other students testified that he pointed a gun at a teacher as he fled. At his trial, Brazil told the jury he never meant to pull the trigger. He received a sentence ranging from 25 years to life in prison. William Cornick. William Cornick was born on June 26, 1998. While his parents were separated, Cornick was said to have been raised in a supportive and loving environment. He was diagnosed with diabetes in 2010, meaning he would not be able to follow his dreams of going into the army. 2 months before his 16th birthday, his completely irrational feelings of anger towards his Spanish teacher, Anne McGuire, began to intensify. Cornick told his friends that he wanted to kill Mrs. McGuire after she gave him a detention and told him that he could not drop Spanish. Anne McGuire was a Spanish teacher who had been working at the Corpus Christi Catholic College in Leeds for 4 decades. Cornick had been planning to murder his teacher and 2 others on the day before the attack. He considered using a gun or even pushing Mrs. McGuire out of the window. On the morning of the murder, he took 2 knives to school, including one with a 21-centimeter blade, as well as a bottle of Jack Daniels. Cornick did not hide his plans and even told fellow students that he planned to kill his teacher and target another one who was pregnant. After going to Spanish class with Mrs. McGuire, Cornick returned to the classroom and stabbed the teacher in the neck and back 7 times. Mrs. McGuire, who was just 5 foot 2 inches tall, then ran from the room trying to escape. She screamed to a fellow teacher that she had been stabbed. Other staff member then pushed Mrs. McGuire into a room and blocked the door so Cornick could not get in. Mrs. McGuire passed out, and despite attempts to resuscitate her, she was pronounced dead later that day. Cornick was jailed for life with a minimum of 20 years at Leeds Crown Court on 3 November 2014. Jeremy Goodale. This is Jeremy Goodale. Jeremy Goodale, 17, and another teen, Willard Miller, are accused of killing Fairfield High School Spanish teacher Nohema Grabber. Nohema Grabber was reported missing on November 3, 2021. Her body was later found at Chautauqua Park. Police say she was beaten with a baseball bat. Jeremy Goodale faces charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit a forcible felony. Goodale described in the messages how the pair had conducted surveillance on Grabber and described how they killed her and dumped her body, according to the police. Grabber's car was caught on surveillance footage entering and leaving the park on the day the teacher's body was uncovered. Jeremy Goodale faces a separate trial from Willard Miller. Both teens are charged as adults. A potential motive for the shocking crime hasn't been disclosed, as attorneys for the teens are fighting to keep many documents in the bizarre case from public view. Miller also had a motion to move his trial to juvenile courts, but a judge had not ruled on it yet. If both teens are convicted as adults, they face life in prison without parole. That was it for today's video. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to our channel and hit the like button.